We are hiking in the Adirondacks, Poca Moonshine. What I wanted to talk to you about today is the environment, the importance of, after you've dealt with trauma, the environment you surround yourself in, the people you surround yourself with. So I was working at a hospital. I was a critical care tech in an ICU, and my son, right before he passed, like 19 days before, he was in his mom brought him to the emergency room. Come to find out he had the beginnings of pneumonia. And my son had a fragile heart, so there was a mistake that was made in the emergency room. The doctor informed us immediately that she had made the mistake of giving him too many fluids. Long story short, his heart couldn't handle it, and they had to resuscitate him twice. Working as a critical care tech in the ICU, I'd have to grab the code cart and rush to codes in the hospital, whether they're in the ICU or another part of the hospital, and do CPR, chest compressions. And so I saw my colleagues doing that to my son. Twice they brought him back that way. They didn't think he was going to survive the night. Sent him to Vermont. He did. And then Vermont sent him to an ICU for kids in New York City. And he was there for 19 days in the ICU before he passed, on a ventilator for part of it. Getting weaned off the fentanyl they got him addicted to lessen the pain. I saw things that, I worked in an ICU, and I knew, seeing my son like that I just couldn't be around that anymore. So I knew right away that I couldn't work in the ICU. I ended up getting back into journalism. There was a job actually opened up where it was only like a 50-mile drive. Even though this happened, I got to work, right? I was not ready. At one point, I was at a middle school to do an interview. My son was 12 when he passed away. So I'm surrounded by kids that are his age. And I have a panic attack. End up in the bathroom shaking and crying. Another point, driving to work. This kid had been missing, a couple of years older than Sammy. And they thought they found a body. And had a panic attack then. There was no way I could do that. I was freaking out. How could another parent lose a child? And just trying to go to work every day. I was started drinking during the day. My wife slowly watched me become like a zombie, the shadow of myself. But hey, there's those stories we tell ourselves, right? So that didn't work for me, but that's what they say, and life has to go on. You got to go to work. You got to do it this way. Honestly, they didn't even know how bad it was in my head. I'd entertained a lot, taking my own life. I just couldn't be here anymore. Just at the right time. My family was like, you need a break. Why don't you go to Vermont? I had been going in my off time on the weekends to hike there. That's where I felt like I could connect with Sammy. Explained to my boss, who had been very nice to give me the job because I'd been out of journalism for a few years. But I had explained to him what had just happened before. So he knew I was reeling, and he was like, yeah, do whatever you gotta do. And if you want a job again, come back. Because I did do a good job there. I loved being a journalist. I was good at it. When I made that choice, not everybody was thrilled with it. I had family members, friends, some people really critical of me that I was leaving New York, going to Vermont to be with my family for a little bit and just taking a break. It was wrong. I had responsibilities. And yeah, you're right, I had a wife, Sammy's stepmom, who was struggling because she had been in his life 3.5 years at that point. And she had a daughter, my stepdaughter, who was, I think, 6 at that point, maybe. So I'm leaving their life, and I had a big force, obviously, in their lives. I mean, we used to do everything together, hike, kayak, go on adventures. But if I would have stayed, I'd have been on the fast road into turning into a person that was ugly and dark and I couldn't live with. I'm overwhelmed all the time, constantly, by this crushing pain and nightmares of Sammy like screaming in different settings, like he screamed when he was in the ICU. Nightmares about what happened to him. The images in my head of them doing compressions on him, him dying in my arms, in his mom's arms, his last breath, the sounds when he took those last breaths. I just was not fit for life at that point. I made the decision to go. I got judged. One family member was pretty harsh, but then when I broke down in front of him and he saw my pain, he quickly was like, oh shit. Because you don't know unless you experience it, how bad it is. And he was fully supportive. I don't think that's something you should have to prove to people, but you know, if they haven't gone through it, they don't know. Those stories that we tell ourselves and others tell us, it's like there's these things that happen. This thing happened. This is how it felt. And then everybody started attaching their stories to it about what it was supposed to look like for me. And you gotta be strong enough to shrug that shit off. Only you know what you need. And you gotta be able to look at yourself and where you are in the moment and make those decisions. Packed up and moved to Vermont. I needed to feel safe, but it was like I wrapped myself up in the womb again and sat and looked at the mountains, hiked when I wanted to. I don't know if it was the right or wrong choice. I don't give much credence to that right or wrong. I think they're all stories we create. I think I knew myself and the tools I had, and I don't regret it. It wasn't easy there. I was having nightmares still. I was bawling all the time. But it made me feel safe with my family. I got a job working a couple hours a day, 5 days a week at this little store up the street, this Indian family. And that's what I needed too when I was ready. Would go to work for them. I was still though drinking at the time, you know, before work. I'd be at work and I'd be bawling in the cooler as I was stocking their drinks, because that's what I did. I stocked the shelves and cleaned the place. My son had just died and it was graphic. And I just still kept having the images, having these reoccurring dreams, like when they were trying to wean him off fentanyl, and who knows where his brain was at that point because of the drugs, but also the shot he took, the lack of oxygen when they resuscitated him twice. So here he is going through withdrawals because they're trying to get him off the stuff because it's not good for you. But at the same time, when he's screaming and going crazy like that, and here's this kid who didn't have any strength. I mean, his body was shot, but the withdrawals and everything, the pain of that was so bad that it was almost like this vicious animal. And I'm sure if he even knew who we were at that point, he was wondering why we weren't helping him and saving him. So I'd have these recurring dreams, like one, he was on this roof and he just started running across it and he was screaming like he did in the ICU, and I was running because I knew he was just going to keep running and go right off the top of the roof, and I needed to get there. I needed to save him. And I just remember being terrified as I ran and heard the screams, and then he just fell off the roof. So yeah, I made the right decision, I think, for myself. Even though I said I don't believe in right or wrong, I made the decision that felt good for me, knowing where I wanted to be, so I could be a good me. Be a me I appreciated and could live with. Be a me for myself, for my wife, for my stepdaughter. I needed this time to just feel safe again. It was coming on a year. My son had passed away, and I'm still not in a good spot, but I'm learning how to live with it and what I got to do so I can be the person I want to be. So I decided I was going to go on a road trip. I had the money, and I was just going to travel the country and hike all over, and I thought this will be good for me. I wanted to find a way to incorporate my son into my life without being lost in the trauma, but with also facing it. And at that point, I hadn't really faced the trauma. I'd just been in this safety, this little bubble. So I needed to, I thought, face it and deal with it and talk to him and really mourn him, finally having the clarity to do so. And I could do that hiking, traveling. I could look at his videos and his pictures and talk to him and really mourn the loss of him. And it's never going to go away, but kind of purge that initial loss. And people had stuff to say about that too, you know. And I knew who I wanted to be and where I wanted to be and what I needed to do it. I had a nurse once tell me her mom, you know, was lost her brother, and she's a drunk now, you know. They would compare me to other people who lost someone and say, well, look at this person. This person just went back to work and did this. And maybe that's what they needed. Maybe it worked for them. But also, I know people who did that because they listened to those stories. Those people aren't in good places in life now. It's years and years and years later. They're drunk still. And I'm not judging them, but they're drunks or they're angry. I wanted to be, I chose to be a person I could live with. I needed to be alone and to get strong on my own. And a lot of times we don't realize that we're not surrounding ourselves with good people or a good environment because of where we're at. The people in our lives are often a reflection of us. It's what we vibe with at the time, what our chemicals attract. None of us, we can't surround ourselves with healthy people or a healthy environment if we're not healthy. I don't think we can even see it. We're gonna go after things that reflect ourselves, trying to fill these voids. If you're finding yourself always in a rough spot around horrible people, get some help and figure out what you got to do so you can start changing your environment, changing the people you're around. Because healthy people aren't going to they're not going to choose, oh, I want to be around this person who's just in a dark place that's just going to zap my energy all the time. You got to get yourself in a good place or a healthy place. But it's a choice you got to make. Just do that work so you can get to that place. The road trip was really good for me. I mean, I went all over the country. I went to Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, California, Pennsylvania, all over. I was gone like 3 months. And each night I would revisit Sammy. You know, I'd talk to him on the trail, sing to him, look at his pictures, do the crying I needed to do, face that he was gone in the way that I had always known him, and that he wasn't coming back, you know. It's just, I still can't believe it. I expect him to come back. I know he's not. I have these panics still. I always will, that hey, how can this be? How can he be gone? So pretty. Places like this that I feel Sammy with me. Hi, Sammy. Just saw this lady on the trail, and she told me she liked my shirt. Hi, Sammy. This part, though. Love yourself. That's some real shit. Always love yourself. And it's not, if you're in a bad place, or you're not a healthy person at the time, or you don't like who you are, you still gotta love yourself. Love yourself with all your imperfections. Just loving yourself isn't all about bubbles and feathers and gentleness. It's I mean, it takes some gentleness, but it also takes a lot of hard work to love yourself and to see where you are and to say, this isn't where I want to be, but I love who I am right now. I'm going to put in the hard work to be here, and I'm going to love myself even more then. Anyway, we made it. Place, and there is lots of joy to find still. I would not be able to carry the weight of losing my child. I still don't know how I carry it, but I would not be able to if I didn't seek out joy and beauty like this.